So in this class, we're going to look at the second wave of feminism and something called essentialism. So now what is essentialism? It is that idea or that questioning of our understanding of the definition of a woman. That is, who is a woman? So is she different from men or is she just like the men? So we have already seen the second wave of feminism. It consisted of the formulation and dissemination of an ideology. It was a phase wherein these feminists they gave a lot of importance to the formation of ideology and theory. And this would place feminism in the context of dominant discourses. All the other discourses had a very strong theory to back themselves, whereas the feminist movement did not have one. So during this phase, you have these women trying to create, that is, formulate and also to spread an ideology of feminism, just like the other discourses like Marxism or capitalism, existentialism, and things like that. This can also be seen as an attempt at analyzing the social institutions as in marriage, uh, a daughter's role, the different roles that are given to women, and then also religious institutions, educational institutions, so all these social institutions, and trying to arrive at common paradigms of patriarchal subjection of women. So they try to unearth a pattern everywhere, be it religion, be it the educational institutions, be it marriages, anywhere, any walk of life, you would find that women have been subjected and treated as a second sex. So they've been looking at this pattern. So that is the main idea of this particular, you could say, field of, one second, particular field of analysis. And they also try to unearth the underlying patterns of discrimination that lay embedded in the meta narratives of society. So whatever that is considered to be standard, the norm, normal, and natural in quotes are actually not normal and natural. It's nothing but a system that has been developed over time, and when you reiterate and when you repeat it again and again, what would happen? People start following it blindly without questioning it. And they think that this is the sacrosanct truth, wherein the woman has to play the second fiddle, as in the status of a second citizen. So these kind of patterns were unearthed by all these different feminists through their seminal writings. We have spoken about Kate Millett's Sexual Politics, then Simone de Beauvoir, she speaks about the second sex. Betty Friedan, she speaks about the feminine mystic. All these works are in fact trying to unearth these patterns of discrimination that's there in society. Now, coming to essentialism, what is essentialism? It's actually that idea or that concept that women are a class unified because they possess certain unique qualities. That is, all women are more or less the same. Biologically they are same, as well as the kind of experiences that they undergo in their lifetime is also same. That is the main underlying assumption of this idea called essentialism. And here they say that um, women are as good or as bad as men. That is, there is nothing to separate them from men. They're just like them. So therefore this is enough to claim equality with men. So they're just like men, so therefore you need equality. So they try to enter into the male world, that male space, the outside world, you talk about the office or whatever, the politics, different fields, into the male world. And they were okay with the idea of taking help of other men, and they depended on men to bring about legislation in favor of women. So this is that initial stages wherein they sought equality with men, and they wanted to be accepted into the male domain, the male world. And again, it was this idea that had led to the suffrage movement also, if you remember. Realizing that they are not treated on par or equally with men, they started demanding suffrage, right? So there's this claim for equality with men. So essentialism is in if you have to put it in simple plain words, it's generalized femininity. That is generalizing, as in all women are the same, more or less. They are more or less the same. Only problem is that there is this unjust social system that discriminated amongst women. So all are okay. I mean, women are all the same. So the only problem is that the social system is bad, because of which women have been excluded from uh, the dominant sphere, that is the male sphere. You can find the same idea in Mary Wollstonecraft's work also, Vindication of the Rights of Women, wherein she's speaking about the inherent equality of all human beings and the irrationality of depriving women of the rights enjoyed by men. That is, if men can have it all, why can't we also? That is the underlying thread in all these works, and also all these feminists who believed in essentialism. So, in essence, women are the same. So, now the essentialist argument, if you try to pare it down and try to divide it into kinds of sets of argument, it says that there is no cause for the difference of status between men and women. That is, everybody is same. So there should not be any reason for any kind of difference between men and women. And there is a difference. Why? Because there is this existence of an unjust social system. So the social system was really bad, because of which has happened this unequal distribution, as well as that unjust discrimination of women. So they started this demand for suffrage on equal footing, and they were also helped by men, and they had no problem by aligning themselves with men who were willing to help them. So they wanted to enter into the space occupied by men, and they also understood how patriarchy has been inimical as in hostile and unfriendly to women. And they say that patriarchal institutions, they rob women of initiative and responsibility. That is, they are confined into limited spheres, limited spaces like the home, the kitchen, the kind of roles that are given to women. And because of these limited spaces in which they function, they are not able to take any initiative and take responsibility and develop into the full potential. So the main idea behind the movement by these women, these group of women called essentialists, the main idea was to, the main end of this movement was to enter into the male space. They just wanted an entry into this male space and claim equality with men. You have this very famous feminist called Mary Daly, her book Gynecology as in the study of women, right? A study of women. Look at the title, Gyn and then ecology. It's kind of a play upon words. Gyn, ecology, gyna as in of the female. Ecology is actually the study of nature. So she's trying to combine both, and then she's speaking how femininity is actually associated with the body and nature. So according to Mary Daly, she's saying there is no need to forego or sacrifice the feminine traits to enter the masculine world. That is, she also supports this entry into the masculine world. So she's saying you have to enter the masculine world, but when you enter there, you don't have to let go of your feminine characteristics. That is, you are a woman, you keep that. And then she's saying you can overturn the structures of oppression through the use of subversive language. Subversive language as in kind of using language to speak out against the meta narratives of patriarchal society. So language has been used to dominate. For instance, language has been you could say biased and sexist, gendered, wherein you have words like mankind, chairman, and so inherently this bias is always there. So what she's saying is you can make use of language to overturn this, and then make use of a subversive language to get at or to get back at the narratives of the patriarchal society. So she even critiqued Christianity, how Christianity has always treated women on a lower level compared to the male. And then and looking at the title, we can also see how there's a play upon words, and where she's trying to equate femininity uh, as associated with body and nature. So now the essentialist argument in short, is nothing but a generalized female identity, the belief that all women are more or less the same, and then we are all equal, and we're just like men. The only problem is we have not been given entry into the male world. So their main idea is to get entry into the male space, into the male domain. But then there were other feminists who did not like this line of thought or this particular ideology. So one is Simone de Beauvoir, and she can be considered as one of the prominent anti-essentialists. Now, who are these anti-essentialists? Now, anti-essentialists don't really prescribe to the essential uh, theory of feminism, as in all women are the same, and we just need that entry into the male world. They don't agree in that. So she based her theory, Simone, she based her theory on the basis of existentialism. Now, what is existentialism? It's actually a philosophical understanding, a philosophical exploration of our own existence. That is, raises questions like, who are we? Where did we come from? What is the purpose of our life? Why are we put into this world? And what are we going to do with our life? What is the purpose, or you could say, what is the meaning of our existence? It's highly kind of philosophical, wherein questions are raised about our place in the scheme of things and our um, essence as to what we are. So the assumption is that existence precedes essence, and that each person creates for himself or herself an identity and fulfills his or her existence in a unique way. What she's trying to say is that existence is more important than essence. Essence is that femininity or that masculinity, whatever, the essence of each being. So she's saying, more than addressing yourself as a female or a male, what is important is that we exist, we human beings, that human is more important than male or female. So once we are born, it is actually our responsibility to create an identity for ourselves. So I create an identity for myself as a female, as a daughter, as a teacher, whatever. Likewise, each one of us is responsible towards the creation of an identity. And once you create that identity, we have to fulfill that existence in a unique way. That is the realization that I'm different from anybody else, and using the gifts and the talents that I have to fulfill my life's mission in a unique manner. So for Simone de Beauvoir, this is more important than shouting and screaming and calling yourself as a male or a female or whatever. So according to her, so there's no any great difference between the sexes, that is the male or the female. But then when you look at this particular line of thought, there are many feminists who actually accuse Debova, saying that she advocated this perpetuation of masculine values and the masculine structure of society by arguing for entering this male world. So that is, if you are actually thinking that the only end or the purpose of your fight or your struggle is to enter into the male world, what are you trying to prove? You're proving that the male ideology or the male structure is the standard one. That is, you are actually becoming a party to the patriarchal structure, wherein you are validating, wherein you are accepting the patriarchal structure by becoming a part of it. So feminists criticize, many other feminists, they criticize Simone de Beauvoir. And according to these essentialist people, they say that male world is not very bad if women could be given entry. We've already seen that in the previous slides. The only problem for them was the unethical exclusion of women from the male space. Now, anti-essentialists, some of them were really, you could say, extreme. For instance, we've seen how Simone de Beauvoir, who said that more than essence, what is important is that existence. So existentialism becomes the cornerstone of her philosophy when she's speaking about female rights. So this line of thought was followed by the other feminist, Shulamit the Firestone. So these people, what they believed was, you can call them extremists. Why? Because they went to the extent of saying that the female reproductive system, the female reproductive function, was the greatest hindrance for women in the struggle to be free from patriarchy. That is childbearing and looking after the child, feeding the child. These kind of things would keep a woman limited to the confines of the home, and how she is expected to be, to behave in a particular manner, the glorifying womanhood, glorifying motherhood. If you remember the essay that by you remember in the last semester you had that glorifying motherhood. You remember whose essay that was? You just finished that, right? Literature and as identity, wherein a writer is exploring her role as a writer versus that of being a mother. So who is it?
Shashi Deshpande.
Yes, very good. Shashi Deshpande. She speaks about the travails of being a mother and a woman, and the kind of unrealistic expectations that are projected onto a woman, the kind of behavior, and how whole media, movies, and all show women as this glorified, self-sacrificing epitome of perfection, which in reality is not the case. But then by creating this kind of aura around womanhood and motherhood, they are actually doing a disservice to women. So now these women, what they are saying is this biological weakness, it is exploited for the exercise of male power over women. So men, they make use of women's biological weakness, as in that ability to give birth and to take care of the child, whatever, to their benefit. So thereby restricting women into a confined sphere. So now, according to them, maternity is actually an artificial construct. So you can make use of modern technologies to liberate women from the biological peculiarity. That is, you don't have to really ascribe and follow the feminine and the female functions of the body. So they advocate things like abortion, contraceptives, and then she says, okay, you have to kind of perpetuate life and have children for the next generation. So if you have children, maybe you should exercise something called communal child rearing, wherein you have the whole community taking responsibility for the upbringing of a child. So don't put it, put the whole thing on just the mother's head. That's what they're saying. So once you do this, a kind of a communal child rearing, you'll be able to shatter the myth of maternity. That is, it's something very holy and something very mysterious, and that happens only between the mother and the child, and the kind of things that are told by us through media. So it's one extreme way of looking at the feminist movement, wherein these women, they are denouncing their own femininity. They don't want that, and they want to claim equality with men, as in even on the biological sphere. So that's one extreme of anti-essentialism. And again, you had many radical feminists. Even Kate Millett's name can be taken here. They rejected the concept of freedom as an adoption of masculine ways and rejection of essential female attributes. So they are not very happy with Shulamit Firestone or Simone de Beauvoir, and they did not like this idea of adopting the masculine ways and rejecting the essential female attributes. But they were not that true blue essentialist also. Please remember that. So according to them, just entering into the male space does not qualify as true liberation. So just getting into the male dominion is not enough. So if you are just trying to do that, what are you doing? You would be only validating and perpetuating the typically masculine attitude towards life. So that's not the way forward, according to these women. So what they're saying is women should learn to overcome their sense of inferiority. They should assert their femininity and celebrate the femaleness. You have to celebrate that. So when you have these radical feminists speaking about a different stand altogether, wherein you don't have to be like a man, or prove to the world that you're as good as a man. You can work as good as a woman. Why do you need to get yourself validated by the standards that are followed by the men? That's a question. So now when they are speaking about a women's collective or this kind of an ideology, which talks about overcoming their sense of inferiority, asserting the femininity, and at the same time celebrating the femaleness. They're actually anticipating a female space. They have not yet reached there, but then in the movement, you can already see the anticipation. And it is from these ideas that later we have a moving away, wherein women, they are saying, we don't want equality with men. We don't want equality. Who wants equality when you have a male space that is dominated by cutthroat competition and ego and things like that? We want a different world. That's the idea. So the seeds of this idea is sown during this particular stage. So now, anti essentialism, they say the end of the feminist movement is not only to expand the male domain to include women, but also a deconstruction of this splendid structure of values to find acceptance of their femaleness and dignity in society. So, these anti essentialists, what do they want? They want to get into the male sphere, the male domain. They want to get into that, and getting in there, they want to deconstruct that, because they want to analyze, they want to kind of break it down into parts and analyze the structure of values. And then they also are talking about getting accepted by the male society or the male domain, acceptance of their femaleness and dignity. So now also this is now slowly leading towards the creation of a special space for women, wherein they could explore the idea of femininity. So we are speaking about a space within the domain, the male domain, wherein they can explore. I mean, a separate domain wherein they can explore their identity. But then when you're talking about all these, there are lots of limitations. So essentialism has lots of limitation. The essentialism, you can say, it contributed in one big manner towards the creation of a political solidarity of women, a kind of a collective, something like a collective of women, um, wherein it brought women together. They became more conscious and aware about their rights, but it did not address many of the complexities. Why? Because essentialism, it is trying to homogenize different classes and races of women. So whatever these theories were talking about, it was all in a general sense. They were not really speaking to the different and unique experiences of different classes and different races of women. For instance, you have black women, aboriginal women, and women from the third world, women from Asia. Even when you're talking about women from Asia, you have women from Bangladesh whose experiences would be different from that of India, or say that of China, whatever, right? So from the third world, who do not find their unique experiences reflected in these theories. So these theories from the West, they were from the West. It did not really address the life experiences of black women and aboriginal women, that is the native women, and women from the third world. So this concept of identity of politics is actually based on a monolithic subjectivity of the Western white female experience. Monolithic as in like a single structure wherein they are generalizing, and it is based on the Western white female experience. So all this theorizing, whether you're talking about the mainly the essentialist point of view, the theories that they made, they were all actually monolithic. There's just one-sided, unidimensional, and based on the Western white female experiences, which did not really address the black, the aboriginal, and all the other varieties of women all over the world. So this kind of a skepticism as in you're doubting and you're questioning the whole women's movement. So now that led to the beginning of the third wave of feminism. So the third wave of feminism can be seen as a much more inclusive party, as in you have the questions of identity, the problems, and the unique experiences lived by the blacks, the colored, the aboriginal, and again, women from different classes and different cultures. Everything is taken into consideration. So it is not a homogeneous mix. So this second wave, though it contributed quite a lot in terms of theory, the greatest criticism against this particular wave is that it did not address to the heterogeneous identity and experiences of women elsewhere, because these women, they were speaking from their perspective as in the Western female lived experience, which was, you could say, more privileged compared to the life experiences of women elsewhere in the world. So now the second movement, because of this limitation, lack of inclusivity, led towards the third wave of feminism, which we'll be looking at in the next class.